and thanks all for being here. My name is Thomas Howe. I'm the CTO of 10Digit, and this is a follow-up to a talk that I gave last year called Form Factor Design. I'll go over that a little bit before we go into the meat of the presentation. And so the point here is for us to be a little less shallow about how we understand what we do for a living and to maybe think a little differently. I truly believe that this is something which happens all the time and we don't know it. For every complex problem, there's an answer which is clear, simple, and wrong. And so what I suspect will happen to many of you in your lives is some way, somehow, there'll be someone going, hey, we need better customer experience. People like the message. Can you add messaging into what we do? And when that happens, let me give you some ideas about the ways in which you can make a positive difference. But before we get there, let me just point something out to you. I want you to just go back in time and think about the first engineers who had to solve this particular problem. I want to talk to an employee at a distance. And this perhaps happened, 80 years ago, probably more than that. And so the solution that we came up with at the time was I'm going to call them, I'm going to listen to something on that earpiece, and I'm going to press a key on my kitchen phone, and someone else's desk phone will ring. Hopefully they're going to be there, and we can talk. If they're not going to be there, we can leave a message. Right? Is that how that works? Remember, there was a time before this happened. There's a time where we weren't able to do this. And what I'm trying to point out here is as they did it, this was the solution they thought was a great solution for talking to an employee. But it has a little bit of an Achilles heel in it. It's called the kitchen phone. And when you think about designs, I want you to think about the form factor you're designing around and from. So the reason why we picked that particular way of solving the problem was because the form factor of the day, which was hanging on a kitchen wall, only had your voice and DTMF keys. There's nothing else you could play with. But today, that is not the form factor we actually are interacting with. In fact, here are some examples. We can be using a smartphone. In fact, most of us do. But we could also be using a smart speaker like Alexa. You could be using a browser. And I want to ask just the question, if we had to resolve that problem, would we do it in the same way again? Well, I think if we were designing for kitchen phones, we would. But look, there are other things to design to. So just to stay with it for a second, imagine trying to solve this problem with a smartphone. It would be really, a bit out there to make someone with a smartphone call, listen to a prompt, hit weird digits, listen some more to talk to an employee. If we were going to solve this exact same problem, this is how we'd solve it. We'd send a text message, and the text message would say, hey, I'm here, and you say, I want to talk to someone in accounting, and then someone in accounting would text us back. Me as a customer would love that experience, and that depends upon me carrying a smartphone. So here's my first message. It's okay, it's fine to design to a smartphone because hardly anybody's calling from their kitchens. And as we start thinking about designing communications things for not landlines, I want to give us a method for understanding how to solve them better. So it turns out that all smartphones can do 4 things. A smartphone can make a phone call, it can send a text message, it has a camera, and it has a browser. All of you people here in the audience all have a smartphone. All of you people here in the audience can send and receive text messages, phone calls, have a camera, and have a browser. That's what I should be depending upon to help you get your needs met. And why did this all happen? Well, I alluded to it. By the 80s, nearly every single functionality that consumers use to communicate with businesses was thought of before we had smartphones and databases and internets and nearly everything which we take for granted. They weren't actually designed to work with the things we actually carry, smartphones. So I would posit that the most common case, what you should be thinking about as you're trying to design systems for people, is that they have a smartphone. By the way, who in this audience doesn't have a smartphone? Thank you. And I'm just gonna pick it out of my head here. The biggest bank in America. It's what is it? Citibank? Bank of America? Citibank. We'll say Citibank. Let's say Citibank. Okay. Who here has installed the Citibank application? Who on their smartphone actually has the? You do. 1, 2. Fantastic. So it's a little stat here. Only 2 companies in the entire world have actually had their apps installed on most smartphones. That is Facebook and Google. Even Bank of America, with the world's greatest use case and the money to back it up, still doesn't get most of its customers to install it, never mind use it more than twice. As we design communication solutions, depending upon an application, is the rare case. Because most of the time, people will not have installed the application. So don't count on a mobile app. It ain't there. So that's why I say adding SMS to a landline does not make it a mobile design. That's why it doesn't help you. Because you're only designing for SMS. SMS isn't mobile. Cameras and mobile browsers and phone calls and SMS, that's mobile, not just SMS. So if you're going to use SMS in your things, go straight in. Don't hesitate. Dive into the pool. If they're texting you, it's not from Alexa. So I'm going to go over a few smartphone design examples here that I want to go over with you theoretically. Just to really hammer the point down. So authentication. So today, when we authenticate people in call centers, we do it around the last 4 of your social security number. That's because when you have a landline phone and all you do is talk, it's all you can do. But that is not true for a smartphone. For a smartphone, you can take a picture of your face and do facial recognition. It works on messaging, no phone calls required. The teenagers love it. They take selfies anyways. It's a better authentication solution. And it depends upon you having enough guts to go, oh, we're dealing with smartphones. Or document delivery. You know? So you know what? They do. I know you're not going to believe this, but it's true. Today, when you call an enterprise and you go, I need a copy of my insurance contract, they're going to ask you for an email address or a fax number. Nothing screams 1985 more than fax machines. Why can't you just simply send a text with a link to the document in it? Click the document, it opens up into your mobile browser. Have the guts to design for a smartphone. Or how about cheap augmented reality? How about you have a customer who's like asking, hey, I'm having a hard time fixing my widget. Help me fix my widget. How simple is it to send out a link to that widget needing fixing person and having them click on it into the mobile browser that uses the camera to overlay on top of what they're seeing? You can do that if you really, dive into it. Or how about secure chat? So one of the biggest problems with SMS is this whole, HIPAA compliance. How do I figure out how to use SMS for banking applications and healthcare applications when I can't erase it at a distance? Well, the answer is simple. If you design for a smartphone, you send a link to a secured mobile chat page, which you can wipe remotely. It doesn't show an SMS. Use SMS to deliver the link, and then use the mobile browser to satisfy the service. Getting it? Right. So, and when you do that kind of thought, there's all kinds of stuff you can do in communications that we just don't see today that we should be able to do, like language translation. This is a favorite. Again, something you may not know happens, but I'll just let you know. Today, when you call a company, generally, the agent has to speak the same language as the customer. But if you had a smartphone design, it's much more straightforward. you translate the messages back and forth. And then when you escalate into voice, you escalate into a three-way call between the customer and the agent and the appropriate interpreter. Now, that might seem like a waste to you, but let me tell you what a waste actually is. If you're a government, a hospital, a State Department, import-export, any large population provider, you have to solve the translation problem today. And the way you solve it is you go, oh, I think this person is speaking Korean, but it could be Japanese. I'm not sure. So then you have to go find the person who's going to be able to differentiate those two and then schedule that call, which takes time. And it's very inefficient. Like we're talking 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes worth of stuff. Instead of thinking about how wasteful it is to have a person translate, think about how much time we actually waste trying to find the right person to translate. And if you're in one of these positions as a hospital, a State Department, a government, import-export, this is a big deal for you. Not to mention names, but there's a very large credit card company who has a one-day problem when people text into their Twitter handle in a different language than they can speak. It takes them a full day to figure out how to find the person to translate it and to respond to that tweet. So if it's an English company and people are complaining over Spanish, you're screwed for a day until this company can figure out who's going to get back to you. Okay, so here's some real life examples here. We did some great trials with a company, and their exact problem was they have recalls. Every auto company has recalls. It's not new, and their problem is outbound calling. So they make 200 outbound calls for every connect, and that's not. I've heard that number a lot. 0.5% on a connect, because everyone is basically not answering their phones. Random number comes in, who's going to answer it? How much easier is it to solve that problem by sending them a text message saying, this is Volkswagen, we have a recall, it affects you, can we help? That open rate is incredibly large. Why does it work? It works because people read their text messages. Why can they do it? Is public safety. No reason they can't. Are there other hockey fans here? So I had the pleasure last season of running the 50-50 raffle for the Boston Bruins. And so a 50-50 raffle is when you're in the stadium or watching it in TV, you can bet money. Half the money raised goes to a charity and half the money goes to the winner. And so people would text in to play the 50-50 raffle, and then 40 times, because it's 40 home games, I was able to text them back saying, hey, you won. I was Santa Claus for people for a good 40 games. And the average pot was around 75, 100 grand. So here's 50 grand. So here's another communications problem where I want to interact with an arbitrarily large set of people speaking a number of languages, French and English, for darn sure, it's hockey. And so here's a solution that I can put on a smartphone. I can have people start with messaging. I can interact with them with messaging. And when they won, they can call to say, I won, how do I get my money? And when okay, I'm from Boston. People in Boston have very colorful language. You might call it swearing. We call it Irish punctuation. And one of the unseen things about the addition of messaging, addition of smartphones into the call center, is that when someone calls you bad names on messaging, it doesn't hurt as much. I did not know this about people. Oh, and people in Boston, I mean, like I have quite a collection of horrible things that people say. A lot of biology involved. But again, by designing for the smartphone, that allows you to protect the psyche of your contact center agents. You could even blank them out for the contact center agents to see it. Here's another one. We talked about this before, biometrics. 4 minutes left. So this is a great case of being able to take what those 4 standard ideas, the browser, the text message, the phone call, and the camera, to put them together to do Biometrics. So let me give you a couple. This is one way of doing it. Take a picture of yourself, take a picture of your face and your license. Validate if the license is real, matches the face. That's one way of doing it. You could send down a link to the secured chat and then measure the keystroke dynamics that people use to text into the chat. Keystroke dynamics are actually part of the biometrics, and make a phone call and do a voice print. Listen to their voice. The next time you talk to them, you go, hey, that's the same person I talked to last time. Why can I do that? Designing for a smartphone. If I'm designing for a smart speaker, could I do that? No. Smart speakers can't do cameras. They can't do text. They can do voice. Anyways, wherever you look, and these are all the places that we validated, there are workflows, there are simple to implement ways of really enhancing your customers if you simply design for the smartphone. So adding SMS ain't going to do it, but adding the smartphone will. So that's it. I got a couple minutes left. Questions?
Excellent. Any questions for Tom? So you're active in the market selling this.
Oh, yeah.
Which of those verticals is the hottest at the moment and why?
So we're killing it with finance, and for two different reasons. The big guys have a lot of money that they're spending in the call centers that on fraud, et cetera. But the more interesting problem is in the small guys. We're like rolling up savings and loans because they don't have technology that they can purchase. These kinds of solutions are day-long solutions. They're easy to do. They aren't hard. So the small guys can pick it up. So that's a big one. Cool. And another big one that we're seeing, sports is big. Sports is really huge because they have large amounts of customers that they don't have relationships with. Yeah. The Boston Bruins do not know who watches their games. Yeah,
absolutely. Apofonica in Europe, same thing.
Right.
Sports clubs and interacting with their fans, massive.
And now we know the cell phones of their customers, and that's a whole world.
Exactly. Perfect. Yeah. Again, excellent. Thank you so much, Thomas. That was great.